All right, guys, we are here with CryptoMykel. How's it going, man?
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
So I don't know that I've ever had anybody on my channel that actually works full time at a Bitcoin mining farm. So thank you for joining me. I think this is going to be super insightful.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here. And yep, I do work full-time Bitcoin as of now. So
I love it. I love it. So let's, for my audience, the goal of this is really to help my audience understand kind of like if this is something they're interested in doing, what does it truly look like? What does day to day look like for you? How did you go ahead and apply for this? How did you get the job, the interview process, things like that. So that if there's individuals out there where like, hey, that's what I want to do for a living, they at least have a little bit more of a reality check. So are you ready to dive in?
I'm always ready.
All right, so let's take a step back. So before you were doing what you were doing now, what were you doing as a career and what was that kind of time period for you?
Well, if some of you don't know, I've been into crypto and the mining scene since 2017. Kind of started the YouTube career and journey in 2018. So I've been here around a block or two, as I like to say. So I've been in the space since then. I've always been into mining. Mining was actually a hobby at first. It, of course, is now my full-time career. So it was an interesting pivot going from, working just my normal 9 to 5 job and then switching it up, going into was freelance for quite a while. I was helping out a couple of buddies who had a mining farm in Texas. I was helping them get their feet wet and get their facility up and running, got them going, and just kind of been freelance since then up until about a year ago when I found my current job, which is Satoshi Mining. We're management as a service. We also do deployments, anything that is necessary by the client's needs. And yeah, it was pretty wild. Just kind of found them, stumbled across them on LinkedIn while I was actually applying for other jobs.
That's,
The
that's
name
wild. So
Satoshi.
yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
one sec there, I want to take a quick step back there a little bit. So
Yeah.
first off, the fact that we are in a world nowadays where like this type of job is listed on LinkedIn or this company is listed on LinkedIn is crazy to think about. Like how far we've
Right.
come, right? Where like Bitcoin mining was like the closet, the closet type of style where like you really didn't talk about it. You knew people, but like it was very hush hush, like especially over the last
Right.
several years. And now you're stumbling across it on LinkedIn, which I think is pretty wild. So you were in the job market, you came across this company, and this is actually something new to me. I've heard of this now more and more of like Bitcoin deployment as a service, almost like the world that I
Yep.
came from previously years ago. This was about 15 years ago. I used to work for a management service for IT. We
Okay.
were a third party company that did IT services for companies, which is really funny because now it's like, oh, wait, Bitcoin deployments or Bitcoin operations as a service. It's wild to think how far the industry has come. So tell us a little bit more
Yep.
about this company, just them overall, and then we'll talk about the application process. Today's video is proudly sponsored by Coin Mining Central, the UK's premier partner for ASIC mining hardware, available at coinminingsentral.com. With crypto mining hardware prices at historic lows, now is the perfect moment to invest in the ASIC miner you've been eyeing. Whether you're scaling up or just starting out, Coin Mining Central has you covered. For over 3 years now, I've trusted Coin Mining Central, a company with 6 years of industry experience, for their exceptional service and reliability, and I'm thrilled to continue partnering with their team. They consistently stock my go-to Bitcoin, Dogecoin, KASPA, and Aleo ASIC miners at highly competitive prices, ensuring you get the best value for your investment. Worried about hardware issues? Rest easy. Every ASIC comes with a full manufacturer's warranty, giving you peace of mind with every purchase. For a trusted, established, and secure way to buy your next ASIC, look no further than Coin Mining Central. Visit them today using the link in the video description below and unlock $120 off your order with exclusive discount code The Hobbyist Miner. Plus, check out their new reward program for even more exclusive discounts and benefits. Power up your mining journey with Coin Mining Central today.
Yeah, so, well, first off, the name Satoki is what actually stood out to me the most. Yep, Satoki. Um, it's a funny play on words. Sat, which is a unit measurement of Bitcoin. Well, the derivative of Oki is actually Oklahomans, people who live in Oklahoma. We're called Okies. We refer to ourselves as Okies. So the name stood out to me because I live in Oklahoma, and this company is based here in Oklahoma. So it was just an odd, it was a funny finding, right? Stuck out to me. And we, of course, do management of a service. We have around, I'd say about 10 plus sites that we actually manage for. Is about 150 to 180 megawatts of power. I actually manage 2 sites myself. They're both hydro sites locally to me. So one's 30 minutes from my house and the other one's like an hour and 30 minutes away. Over total, I manage about 40 megawatts of hydro. Both of my farms that I manage are hydro units, which is the new craze and the new way of things seem to be going industrial wise. Not all of our sites are like that though. We have air cooled sites, passively cooled, sites as well. Some immersion sites, natural gas, stranded gas well sites. So we have our hands in just about everything, as well as deployments as well. I've done quite a bit of my fair share of deployments over the past year, and just helping getting things off the ground and running.
So for those that are hearing management as a service and that aren't familiar with that terminology, tell us a little bit about that. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Mm-hmm. It's a location that has built out a site, and your team is coming in and pretty much running that site from soup to nuts, as they call it. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. Sometimes the sites are already deployed, but they're for a client in particular. It's kind of the opposite of what maybe me and you are actually used to. My original bread and butter was retail hosting. We have good friends that own retail hosting sites, and it's the polar opposite of that, right? You go from having 20, 30 clients to having one very large client, and you deal with one person and their team of people, and it's a different change of pace. I've grown to actually really like it. It's more of, it's like professional. It's a professional setting, right? And management as a service would be more of, we deal with the day-to-day operations of a site. We do not physically own the site. The equipment is not ours. We manage it for a client. And that's kind of the best way to kind of go about that, is we take care of their machines and make sure that they have 99% uptime.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, something that people don't realize is like pulling in a third party service like this. Like what, like, you kind of think about it, like why would companies do this? Well, I think one of the things, and this is just my perspective based off of the mining farms that I've visited over the years and such, is that finding people, professionals in this space that are experienced and like ready to go turnkey is very difficult. This isn't a talent pool that is very fruitful. Plus having, versus what your situation is like, these companies can reach out to the company that you work for and they're ready to go, right? That's like, you already have the talent, you already have the experience. So I think that's probably the selling point there that a lot of people don't realize.
And not only that, depending upon where our sites are located at, right, we do have travel techs who basically are boots on ground. They'll travel anywhere from Texas to Oklahoma to Memphis and above, right, and anywhere that they need to go. But what I really enjoy, and part of my job that I actually really take pride in, is teaching. So we normally put a job up on like LinkedIn, Indeed, things like that for the local area, and we'll hire local talent, people that have network engineering, degrees, people who are familiar, and we have people that apply that are in like the local area, and we teach them. I teach them. They may not be familiar with ASICs, but they may be familiar with crypto in general, and we just teach them from ground zero, teach them up, and birth new techs, right, in the space. So it's kind of it's nice, right? I tell my guys is like, right now we don't have like all of these like crazy certifications like you would a mechanic degree and all that. And here in like 10 years, like we will be the reason why there will be certifications. Like we'll be those reasons. So it's an ever evolving space, and it's still so new, but we've been here for so long, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the people that I've spoken to over the years that have stepped into this space and taken jobs or interviewed for jobs, and we'll talk about your process here in a minute, are like individuals that have an understanding of tech at a high level, like how to build a computer. Correct. Or, oh, I built a GPU mining rig back in the day, but understand that concept and then just have an eagerness to learn. And
yes, 100%.
And the big one is they have no problem getting their hands dirty. That's like a huge one for like a mining farm situation. But outside of that, it's like, hey, if you have a rudimentary understanding of the tech side of the world, you can take things apart, put them back together. You understand how point A and point B talk to each other, and you can be taught, and you're interested in being taught. I feel like it's an easy step in there. So let's talk about, so you found that company on LinkedIn, you applied, and what did that interview process look like? Interviewing for, managing mining farms.
Well, I would say my interview process would be different than most, right? I have a presence. I've been around in the space for quite a while. So people kind of already knew who I was. I already had recommendations, and it's a little different probably for a normal person who's maybe into crypto but doesn't have somewhat of a public appearance, right? I was able to show like my YouTube channel, and like they know that I had my own farm at one point in time. I could show them documentation of that. And that was just kind of my whole point of my YouTube channel, was always a documentation of my journey, not necessarily go mine this coin or go mine this coin, make money, whatever. Like I show you my journey, how I did it. If you want to do it, I'm showing you how I'm doing it. It's always been my go-to, like my motto for my channel. So it was easy to have that because it was just documentation of everything that I've done up until this point, which was very helpful. But went through a few interview processes, kind of getting into where I see myself. I started out as a Tech 1. I was a glorified Tech 1, as we like to put it. I was well overqualified to be a Tech 1, but I did start from the ground up, just progressed relatively quickly, just due to my skill sets. So it wasn't too bad. Depending upon the site, though, the sites that you go and apply for, there are like background checks and security clearances, things like that. We have a site down in Texas that's at a bid tier facility, and you gotta have a pretty good background check done to go and even be at that site. So it's just things that you gotta be like aware of.
That's great. So
wasn't too crazy though.
So looking back on that process, how would you say your time as a home miner, your time as a YouTuber kind of helped in this situation into kind of stepping into, we'll call it the enterprise or the professional world of Bitcoin mining? Was a lot of that super helpful? Was a lot of that like kind of the foundation for you? Yeah, talk us through that a little bit.
Well, like I've said, mining was a hobby to me at first. I actually I stumbled upon it during my ending of my high school years. Computer teacher friends built a Bitcoin mining rig for a buddy of mine back in the day. I didn't take his advice. First big spiral up in 2018 when we had that 20K run. I watched him pay off his student loans, his house, everything, and I was like, all right, well, I missed out, but I'm not going to miss out now, and I continued to learn ever since then. And I've always just been learning, right? So it played a huge role in my getting like into the career that I'm in. I've always enjoyed mining, tinkering with things. Ran my own farm in Oklahoma for a while with Nemesis, who does DCA Venture with me. We had our own farm here, so that was always a interesting step into a hobby to starting an actual business and running things industrial scale, but got me prepared for what was to come, right? And helping out farms, being a 1099 contractor and turning my passion into like basically my dream job, right? This was a hobby that became a profession and a career, which puts a different take on things, right? I gave up for a while. I was like, I don't want to work a 9-to-5 job. I wanted to do what I wanted to do for like myself, right? I worked in crypto for a while as a freelancer, and I was on my own schedule. You know what that's like now. Like you choose what you're doing day to day, and it's an interesting take. But now I'm back into a 9-to-5 job, but I'm not miserable as usually would be in like a normal 9-to-5 that you may not actually enjoy. So I do take pride in my job, and I do enjoy it quite often. I hear it quite often from fellow employees, people that I'm training, say that I really like my job, and I was like, I do. I love my job.
So talking about the company you work for or the individuals you work for, just that atmosphere, do you find that a lot of them are like Bitcoin maxis and like nothing else matters except for Bitcoin? Or is, because I know the world that you have come from is more altcoins, Bitcoin's there, GPU mining, all that. So
Yep.
What does that look like with the people that you're surrounded with day to day?
Wow. Well, the people that I work with day to day are not Bitcoin maxis to heart, but I would say every facility that we manage and operate, they are Bitcoin facilities. Not a one of them have altcoin machines. So it's, definitely a maxi environment, but even the people that I talk to and conversate with on daily, they're interested in the space in general. But Bitcoin is the safest bet for a big business, right? Same thing with like pool mining versus solo mining. I work for many farms, and I'm like, why don't we solo mine? I don't. And then like I think about it, and I'm like, well, you can't build a business model on if I hit a block today. It's easier to build a business model. I make this amount every day, and you can project that, right? Even with difficulty adjustments, you can still predict what you're roughly going to make in a yearly basis versus a solo mining pool. I'll hit a block every day, but what if I don't hit a block for 3 days? Can we afford that electricity bill for 3 whole days of, a 10 megawatt site? Probably not.
Yeah, I think it's hard to go to a board or a group of investors and go, hey, we can't guarantee our profits day to day, or we don't know, what our revenue, we know don't know what our revenue is going to be, but we know our electric costs and profit is to be determined. Like, that's just not how that works. And I get it. When you're at that size and you're that type of capital, I totally get that. Remind me, at the time that Mara announced that they were picking up KASPA miners as a portion of some of their inventory. And now, granted, if those of you guys don't know, some time ago, Mara went ahead and announced that they were going ahead and purchasing KASPA miners. Now, this was some time back, where KASPA was doing significantly well. Now, they even said
mining disrupt last year.
Yeah, they did say they were selling into Bitcoin, so it wasn't like they were all about KASPA at that point. But do you remember what that sentiment was, at least amongst the circles that you're in within the professional enterprise atmosphere of like, holy cow, that massive company went ahead and bought something other than Bitcoin miners?
So I didn't work for the company that I work for now during that time period. I was freelance at the time, but still very well in tuned into the space that I'm currently in. Just was freelance then, and the sentiment was mixed, right? they were like, why are they doing CASPA? And it's like, well, they're not holding the CASPA, they're selling it. So obviously they don't believe in the project, but they believe in returns. And I was like, yeah, well, is it like a good offset to their balance sheet, right? An easy way to, they could take a loss and have potential write-off for that, or they could offset their costs to acquire more Bitcoin, which they did for quite some time. I don't know if they're actively still mining CASPA, but yeah, it's a tough one. I don't see where the profit would lie for them to continue to be doing that. If they're trying to hedge making more Bitcoin, it would be, in my opinion, counterproductive at this point for them, maybe. But the sentiment was mixed in the space for sure. They were like, why are people mining, poop coins for things? I was like, well, I mean, I'm a GPU miner. I speculative mine. I still do. I still have GPUs running to this day. I don't always hold the coins that I'm mining. I usually convert it into Bitcoin. Personally, it's been a safer bet for me, and I'm always trying to acquire more Bitcoin. Personally, I have a few other altcoins that I do hold and believe in, but majority of what I actually mine, I'm converting into Bitcoin.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's a shame that CASPA was our guinea pig at an enterprise scale of mining something and buying hardware other than Bitcoin. I get it, because at that time, CASPA was on fire, and there were a lot of profits there, and the miners weren't overly expensive, and it looked like a win-win. But unfortunately, as we all know about CASPA, man, that network hash rate, that emission schedule, the price of CASPA, just all three of those things went in the opposite direction that anyone wanted. And so it didn't help our situation, as most of us are homegrown home miners where we know the value of altcoin mining. Now I look back and like, man, why couldn't it have been script or something, right? Like that would have been great. Now that we know what we know now and just longevity. But let's bounce back a little bit and talk about some of these sites that you manage and some comments you made earlier about Hydro. So my audience is definitely not in tune with Hydro, other than the fact of, I'll be honest, they reach out to me and say, hey, I'm looking to buy this Hydro miner. It's cheaper than this other Bitcoin miner. I want to go ahead and buy it. Is this a good buy? Not understanding the amount of infrastructure surrounding traditional Hydro miners. So for those not familiar, what is hydro mining versus air-cooled mining?
So we can break it down a little bit further as well. Air-cooled, normal ASICs that you would buy in the settings up until like maybe 3 years ago. You have 2 fans or 4 fans depending upon the machine, passively pushing air through the chips, effectively cooling down the chips, right? Then you have immersion mining, where you're submerging the miner in the liquid to do essentially the same thing, dispersing the heat throughout a liquid. And then you have hydro mining, where you are cooling the chips with a water block, like you would maybe in your PC you may have at home right now, but just more larger scale and thicker copper blocks. But there are differences in hydro mining, right? You can buy third-party kits to actually turn a air-cooled machine to a hydro machine, but it's really not. It's still kind of a hybrid machine at that point, because the power supply is still being air-cooled, right? With the traditional hydro unit or hydro units we have now, your power supply is also cooled by the glycol mixture that we use for hydro mining. So it provides a better benefit for cooling down the power supply, right? Which is really your downfall in air-cooled machines. Most people don't know that an S19J Pros, their original APW power supplies, could actually withhold 5,000 watts of power. They could easily do it, but it would never do it in the configuration that it's set in. It would get too hot. So you can still do that, and It's hydro cooled, right? So you actually come into your power supply and you come out through your hash boards. So your power supply is the first thing that's cooled, and your hash boards are secondary to that. So it's way different. Yes, infrastructure is also different. We have containers. We use the AntSpace HK3s, the V7 containers at both of my sites, which are the newest of Bitmain's containers. They have a lot of logic built into them, pre-programming, things that make it more automated, less manual work. Still requires a lot of upkeep though, because you got to make sure that everything actually works at all times. So things you got to watch out for, but they do take a little bit less monitoring of the machines. But you can actually run a normal hydro unit at home if you change out the power supply and buy a better radiator for the place, because all of the ones that we actually use in our sites are 3-phase machines. So none of our hydro sites are anything less than 3-phase. So like 418 volt, coming in. Even 426 at some of our sites. So
okay. So then
a little different, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So then looking at hydro, why now this is all self-mine. This isn't hosted, as you had mentioned earlier. Self-mine, almost a single client there. Hydro, my understanding, you have a lot more upfront capital expense for a company looking to do this. But why go hydro? Like, why are not that I disagree with it, why are companies choosing to go the direction of hydro from your perspective?
I would say probably longevity of the machines, personally. I'll take, for instance, one of the sites that I had my hand in deploying. It was like a 10 megawatt site, and I would say out of 5,000 machines out of the gate, the site's been up and running for I think 4 months now, and it may have lost 20 machines total. So your attrition rate is much lower than an air-cooled facility. So, yes, more capital, but 3-phase, more stable power, cooler power nonetheless, and the amount of space needed is much less, right? If you, in all reality, a 10 megawatt site can be on like 3 acres of land or less. It really not as large a scale as you would say. Like a 10 megawatt site could push out, if they're with like the newest machines, each container is like it's like 1.1, 1.2 megawatts for 75 to 78 terahash per container. So the density is there, right? That and the hydro machines have like 160 chips per machine, or per board per machine. So 160 times 3. So much denser package for sure.
So your units that you have at your site, or just overall in general, what is the model that you guys are traditionally running? Is it pretty consistent?
S21s.
S21. Okay, so the S21 hydro unit that is actually comes
XP
directly from factory.
hydros. Yeah, we have XP hydros and then EXP hydros. The two sites that I personally run.
Okay.
So
now with
not
hydro,
too bad. 430 terahash for like 5,600 watts.
430. That's
and then
fantastic.
The XPs are 473. So
with hydro,
wild.
then are they just pushing those units farther because they have better cooling to support them? So they're throwing more watts at them, which traditionally means more heat. But because you have hydro, you're able to keep them consistently cooled, keep it stable. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, 100% accurate. Even at nameplate, I've seen machines underneath good temperatures running a machine that's like 473 terahash was running like 500 terahash, and that was nameplate, like no aftermarket firmware, nothing. It was just on the best day possible, right? The cool weather, all the factors were in play, and the machines benefited from it.
Yeah, I
100%.
mean that sounds like even looking at like immersion versus hydro, it seems like hydro gives you that true ability to really push these machines farther from factory, which is fantastic, especially where three phase comes in to be more efficient, which is a huge benefit as well. Now, something that I see a lot of, most of my world is air cooled, and so something I see a lot of on air cooled is a lot of temperature fluctuations due to the environment around them. And a lot of that is harmful to these miners, and unless these companies have spent a ton of time of automating their airflow, recirculating their airflow, and they have a whole automation systems with their VFDs in order to try to keep it almost consistent. Unfortunately, the miners take on the brunt of that, weather fluctuation. What does that look like with hydro? Is it pretty consistent year round, or what does that look like with a hydro loop system like that?
So that would kind of depend upon your location, right? Our hydro units are in Oklahoma. We do have some that are like in South Texas, so they do run differently than the units that we have here. We have two sites that are basically the exact same. Their site runs differently than my site does here in Oklahoma, just due to temperature and even humidity. Just overall, just runs different. So even outside ambient temperature plays a huge role into that. It is kind of odd that, or not, I would say odd, but also a bummer for these newer hydro containers. A lot of the degrading of hash rate happens around 98 degrees Fahrenheit, which in Oklahoma and Texas is very easily achievable in the summer months, especially in Texas. So you have to start derating your containers and things like that. So we curve that by actually not running the containers at full capacity. We actually derate them to about 85%. Normal container can hold 210 machines, is how many slots it has available for, and it can power all 210. But we run 168 to 170 depending upon which model of unit we're running, just to keep that 25% in threshold in case it does get warm, right? So there are ways to kind of curb that.
So I would imagine though, in like the winter months, you're not messing with like maybe you are adding units to that container, or you just let it ride because of the stability. And that like that's stable and that container's good. Which direction do you guys go during the colder months?
Stability, right? Stability, and then may or may not be pushing units, right? Depends on the client's wants and needs, right? We will if that's what they would like to do, but
Okay.
yeah.
So
little different.
Yeah. So for those not familiar, so it is hydro, but what does that solution look like exactly? Is it just straight up water, or is it actually a kind of chemical mixture?
It's a glycol mixture. It's an 80-30 mixture, is what we run. So it is basically like antifreeze, but it's industrial based. There are some sites that run just deionized water that does the job just as well, but those are in warmer climates, things where you wouldn't see huge temperature drops. Oklahoma's pretty. You see both ends of the spectrum, right? You see really hot summers and you see really cold winters. So running things like that isn't the best idea. Running an industrial grade like synthetic fluid is ideal.
Okay.
All year round.
Okay, so with hydro sites, it seems like it's very much more specialized. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's a little bit more specialized when it comes down to the hydro loop systems. Do you guys have like people on staff that specialize in that, or companies that do? I would imagine, I imagine that's a little bit more robust, the staff you have on site versus just like a traditional air cooled site. Is that accurate?
Yep, very accurate. Yeah, I've changed the hiring structure, right? For hydro sites. Normally for air cooled sites you can hire a bunch of techs who are familiar with machines, and that's their main job, right? May have some fans or some networking things that they may have to deal with, but nothing too crazy. But when you run a hydro facility, you have other things in play that are not machines, right? And like the full infrastructure of that facility runs upon like that core foundation. So I've hired people that are more mechanical, people that have a mechanical background, because we have a lot of pumps, a lot of plumbing, things that are not really mining related and just need basic upkeep, right? Upkeep, diagnosing, troubleshooting, repairing, things like that. So it's definitely a little bit different going with the hydro sites. You have to have a broader hiring platform, right? Or palette for talent. So I hire the majority, right? My main focus, I hire usually someone that at least one tech who is IT specialized somehow, whether I have a network engineer degree, things like that, working on fiber, just working on internet protocols in general. People that have, as well as having someone on staff that is mechanically inclined, as well as having, of course, someone that is knows what to do with miners, right? You get those three, and you have your guy that's mainly his main job is the machines, teaches the other guys that, right, and starts blending that process in, and then you eventually get a good trifecta of a team built in with something like that. Someone that can always cover all bases if needed.
Yeah, it's great to hear that like a lot of the traditional positions that people would hold,
Mm-hmm.
are do go ahead and, as you had used the term, bleed over into Bitcoin mining operations, especially in the
Correct.
mechanical side of things, where that trade does have opportunity here as well, which is great to hear. Yeah, I like it, like mechanical or plumbing, especially with hydro, and a lot of that stuff, as you had said at the very top of this video, about the fact of just people can be trained as long as they're interested. They can be trained on that Bitcoin side of things, which I think is fantastic. Like, I think it's just kind of, as you had said, kind of finding that great trifecta of individuals and the cross training, which I think is fantastic. So one last question I want to leave with here is, the industry has been evolving from air cooled to
Yeah.
hydro, and a lot of people put immersion up there as well. Which, and now you may be a little biased, but that's okay. Hydro versus immersion. Where do you see the industry going, or where have you seen it going in your eyes with one over the other?
Yeah. So definitely biased, right? I running a hydro site, but prior to the hydro sites that I do run, I actually, one of my good friends had immersion at his site, and I helped him set that up. So I've worked at both. Worked at all three different types of facilities, right? Air cool, or four really. You air cooled, you're passively air cooled, not doesn't have external fans, just by the fans of the machines. Immersion and hydro. They all have their place in the space, in my opinion. Uh, I do like working hydro better than immersion, only because, in my personal opinion, I don't feel the machines need as much of an upkeep. Your main upkeep is the infrastructure, making sure your pumps are good, making sure things are, oiled, making sure your flow rates are good. Like, all of those things really dictates the dependability of your machine. Uh, Immersion, you still don't have that. You're still dunking your machine into a fluid, which doesn't always do the best for the machine. It still kind of breaks it down, even though we're not putting in like mineral oil, which is not good. But it's still, the additives that are in that dielectric fluid still eat away at components, right? You still have things that go bad in that fluid, which in a large scale, a like running my 30 megawatt facility, like I could only imagine the headaches that I would running it in immersion cooled versus like hydro cooled, both of which have their headaches, right? But at that large of a scale, I would see immersion being much more messy and time consuming. Uh, if you spill the glycol mixture, it's kind of like a radiator fluid. It's still water based, right? You can soak it up, you can clean it. Immersion fluid, you spill it, you do not clean that up. Like, it is messy and it stays oily. It degrades cables. You have to have a ready supply of cables all the time, because you can't. That one cable's not going to last the whole lifetime of that miner. You're likely to replace the cable before you replace the machine. You hope. So I don't know. I would just much rather not run large scale immersion sites. Not that I don't think they don't have their place. Like IntelliFlex has a great design for their containers. I do not knock their containers whatsoever, or what they do. Like, they have it down to a T and it works, right? But that is a one container, right? Could you imagine like 30 of those containers? Like, that's a lot. That a 30 megawatt site of hydro is 30 containers. That is the best way to put that. I have 30 containers that I take care of, or my team takes care of, not just me. Not
That's
taking
great.
the credit for my awesome guys, but I don't know. It'd just be a lot more of a mess and a headache, I think.
No, that's super
But
insightful.
still has its place.
Yeah, I think that's super insightful on the fact of like, hey, where the challenges or the attention is put, is different. Hydro being more on the infrastructure, time and time again, immersion is not just infrastructure, but more issues with, on the machine level as well. Versus then you have air, which you have a lot more attention on the machines themselves and problems and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a really good way to look at it. And I think the biggest one where I look back of like the farms that I visited and the people I've spoken to, as you know too, when miners are down, it's lost profits, right? Your money printer is not printing.
Correct.
So when you're looking at that large of a scale, stability is important, uptime is important. Lack of repairs as often is important. And so, yeah, it might look like up front you're putting more capital into hydro. However, long term, it is allowing you to be up longer, more often, less headaches, less labor, going into machines and stuff. So that's a really good point. I don't think I've ever really dove into that and talked about that on the channel, which is, I think, fantastic. So we've been going for about 40 minutes. We're going to wrap things up there, but I want to give you some time. Not only are you in the trenches as a site operator, you also do home mining. You also are a YouTube content creator. Tell my audience a little bit about your YouTube channel, where they can find you, and the type of content over there.
Yeah, so you can find me at CryptoMykel across any platform. You can find me. I keep it simple and the same across all. And I do have to admit, I've been slacking on the YouTube side of things here recently. Past few months, deploying these sites and getting them running from ground up has taken a lot of my time and energy, and I focused it into my job. So the YouTube side did take a little bit of a slack in that time period, which is okay. But like I mentioned earlier, my YouTube channel was always it was always for documentation. I like to call him as my mentor in the space was Peter Saddington. He helped me all the way through my beginning of my career. I can still call him to this day, and we can talk about crypto, Bitcoin, mining, cars in general. And he always drilled into my head, document. Like, that was the process. And that's always been my process for my channel, is documenting what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. Not necessarily telling you what you should be doing with your time and your money and machines, right? It was never really my focus, was just to document my journey, right? And to share it with people. So that's kind of what I focus on my channel. So you can actually go through a timeline of basically my career in the space, and as things evolved, there's videos of me having my personal farm, me running that, me helping, me doing things, right? And it's always been a journey, right? So you can find me in CryptoMykel. I would greatly appreciate if you like to subscribe, of course. Also, like and subscribe to Hobbyist over here for having me on the show today.
Oh,
Greatly
thanks.
Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. So guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave links to CryptoMykel's social media as well as his YouTube down below. Go over, drop him a follow, drop him a subscribe. I always enjoy tuning in to his live streams, asking questions. I'm not in the trenches of a Bitcoin mining farm every day, so it's great to kind of get his insight and thoughts and feedback. So we're going to wrap things up there. Guys, thank you very much for joining CryptoMykel and myself. We'll see you guys next time. Take care. Are you ready to invest in your next Bitcoin miner, but unsure where to start? Look no further than compassmining.io. Why choose Compass Mining? 3 reasons. Number 1, an effortless buying experience. Their state-of-the-art website and secure checkout process make purchasing your Bitcoin miner a breeze. Number 2, their expert guidance. Unsure which Bitcoin miner is right for you? Their friendly, knowledgeable team based in the US is here to help. Number 3, their hosting solutions. Need a place to host your new Bitcoin miners? Compass Mining has over 20 partner locations across the United States. I recently visited their Nebraska facility in December and now host several Bitmain Antminer S21s and S19K Pros at Compass. The experience was fantastic. Ready to learn more? Visit the link down below to set up a free one-on-one consultation with a Compass Mining team member, or watch the full Nebraska mining farm tour down below. Start your Bitcoin mining journey today with Compass Mining.